Can you achieve growth primarily via strategy that emphasizes segmentation and engagement?
God, I hope so, because I mean, that's the tier strategy right now.
Do you ever feel like you're in Inception? I was chatting with a mobile ad tech CEO recently, and he reminded me of the scene in the Inception movie where they're fighting in a hallway and the gravity keeps changing up, down, left, right, keeps cycling through. This, he said, was how he felt since WWDC last year. IDFA out, SKI network in, view through, no, yes. Cohorts, not really, sort of, if you can figure it out yourself. Third party cookies going away. Just constant change. Growth stacks are in chaos, strategies in shreds. Welcome to 2021, baby. This is Mobile Heroes Uncensored, episode 8. My name is John Koetsier, and my co-host is Peggy and Salz. Today, we are talking about segmentation and engagement, and I know that that sounds like just a tremendous amount of fun, but we also give away Bitcoin or Smartcoin. We talk about iOS 15 and Android 12. We talk about postbacks to the people. And we may even have the occasional, almost sort of kind of getting towards post pandemic jokes. Enjoy and ping Peggy or me or Liftoff with your favorite parts. So, we always try to have something funny for you because you know what? Life can be boring. But you know what is also boring? Trying to find a new joke every freaking week. It is not easy. It's not, it's challenging. Let's just put it that way. But I did something. And I'm going to show it to you right now. And here's the reality. We are sort of kind of slowly reopening in the US. Lots of people are double vaccinated and safe. Some of them are going back to the office. Some are saying, hey, forget it. Never going back to the office. Stop that nonsense. Peggy and I are saying, hey, we always work at home. Go ahead. But as we think about that, you know what? I went to Board Panda because I was a Board Panda and I looked for funny office stuff. And this is what I found. You remember, hey, you go to IT and something's not working. There's the hard reset. It's a hammer.
After my own heart here, John. I mean, that is seriously what I do sometimes. I used to kick my computer because it's right next to me and I would just, there you go. Hammer.
I'm going to FedEx you a hammer and you can hard reset that microphone that acts up sometimes.
I want mine engraved though, John. I'm sorry. I really
that would be
seriously
cool.
do.
That would be cool. This is really cool. Do you remember being in the office and, hey, where are we going to go to lunch? What are we going to do for lunch? Everybody has a different idea. Well, in this office, they set up the Hungry Games. And may the odds be ever in your favor. You got to pick something out. And, today we're going to Wendy's. Tomorrow we're going to Tchotchkes, wherever. There you go.
I love it. This is great.
And the motivational posters that are always around the office, right? Well, here's one. The I in team is hidden in the letter in the A-hole. Is hidden in the letter A. So yeah, that does sometimes happen. We've seen that.
These are great.
Yep. Here's an office that is at the North Pole and or somewhere near there. It's probably in Canada, somewhere way up, or maybe it's in Alaska, who knows? And it says, hey, polar bear is in the area. It's a notice posted in the office. Use extreme caution when head outside, go outside with a coworker. Somebody, of course, added slower coworker.
That's cruel, but good.
Yep, I love it. I love it. And here's somebody has a birthday. You got to send around a card. And this dude doesn't want to write in birthday cards and got a stamp that says, happy birthday, have a good one, Brendan. Brendan
it's that personal
lazy.
touch. It's that personal touch that really moves and matters, isn't it, John?
Oh, wow. So personal, so wonderful, exactly. But a little more personal than this office, which set up a form letter for happy birthday where you took off your name and it's all the best from everyone else.
And check your name. I wouldn't do that, John. I'm into checklists, but I draw the line. I draw the line.
Now, I have been in an office that's very, very cool. Many offices that are very, very cool, including San Francisco, where we had electric go-karts
Yeah,
that we would zoom around the office. I am not
yeah.
joking
You
about
lean
this. We
forward.
had
Yep.
electric go-karts. It was .com. It was awesome. Now, I was the only, I in team who used them extensively. But this guy is trying out a Segway, and he says this Segway sucks.
Yep. Got to be charged.
Yeah. This is a little bit more along the lines of what we're doing today because we're always
Ah,
on Zoom or the conference call, right? And here's conference call
I love
bingo.
it.
You
I
hear the
love it.
bing, who just joined, right?
Mhm. Who
And
just joined?
Janice,
Can you hear me? Am I on mute? I had a board meeting today. I won't go there, but it was still similar to this one. It's like, who's all here? And yeah,
yep, yep.
can you see
Janice,
my
if you could please
screen?
mute, we're hearing your dog, those sorts of things, exactly. And you know what we also have at the office sometimes? We have, the occasional contest, like this person who had an art contest and has approximately zero art ability. It was an Easter egg painting contest and provided an egg and says, a master thesis in minimalist design. As we stare into the blank abyss of whiteness that covers the egg's surface, we are forced to look deep into our souls. So
Oh, that's
I,
deep.
I think it's pretty good actually, and I've saved the best for last. If
Okay.
if you're having a bad day, and you just need something to happen that is kind of cool, what you do
Okay.
is you go to the bathroom, you put this sticker on the thing where the paper towels are. The sticker says "Voice activated." Say loudly, "Paper towel now." And key thing, you make sure you empty the paper towel dispenser. And then you set up a hidden camera and enjoy the fun.
Oh, John,
Ah,
you've given me some ideas when we actually get back into connecting with people. That is a cool one. I like the last one.
that
And then
is
we
that
put it
is
back
kind of
on our
cool.
show.
There are some good things about offices. We can't say most of them here because even though
Mhm.
the show is uncensored, it actually is a little bit censored. But
Yeah.
there's the occasional good thing about an office, right?
Yeah, yeah. Those are good ones. Those are good ones. I like the one with the a-hole. I'm gonna share that one actually. That's what
I
social
will
sharing
share
is
that
all
with you.
for.
I will share that with you. I'll share that on
Absolutely.
my Twitter if anybody wants it.
That's what it's for.
There you go. There you go. So, Peggy, I think we also have some mobile marketing news.
Indeed we do. And if it sounds like a rerun, it's because the saga continues, John.
Yes, yes,
It does
yes.
indeed. Guess what happened? iOS 15. It
I
happened.
know.
It dropped. It's real and people can like deal with the reality of it. And there's a little bit of silver lining to that cloud, isn't there, John?
There is a little bit of silver lining to that cloud, and what I've titled it is postbacks to the people, right? I mean, everybody gets postback. You get a postback, you get a postback, everybody gets it's the Oprah of postbacks, thanks to Apple. All advertisers get postbacks if they choose in iOS 15. So that's kind of cool. It is neat. It is something that changes the power balance because guess what? Most ad networks were pretty open about their data, reputable ad networks. Some, and I'm not saying they weren't reputable, but they were self attributing ad networks. The big
Mm.
boys of the industry always had kind of a curtain, an iron curtain, a veiled curtain over some of their data and some of their results. So there's some good reasons for that. There's also really good reasons to kind of, cut a little hole in that curtain and see through. So that is some good news for advertisers.
Might drown in a little data though. I've been talking to marketers like, oh no, another source. Now I get directional data. No one source of truth, but all sorts of little streams.
You know what? You are not wrong about that. That is really interesting because you've got some IDFA data. You've got,
Mhm.
and we're talking iOS 14 now as well. You've
Yeah.
got some model data from a Google or a Facebook, and it modeled. Okay, how? What goes into the model, right? The
Yeah.
model probably incorporates some SKAD network, some IDFA. You've also maybe got some level of media mix modeling or incrementality, which you can't do daily, but you might do monthly or something like that, maybe quarterly, right? So there's so many different sources of data right now. It's really challenging.
Huge jobs for people out there who want to dive and delve through it.
Absolutely.
So we're going to continue. No, it is not the news from before. It's the outcome now. It's not only Epic that doesn't want to pay 30% Apple tax. How about that? Catching on. It's a movement, John.
It's a movement. It's been around for a while, and it just came to the forefront again this week, actually, with a startup called FanHouse, which is a creator economy startup, which basically lets people connect to their audiences and do stuff that's not nasty. So not an OnlyFans, right? It's wholesome connection. And guess what? They give their creators 90% of what people donate and take 10%. Now, somehow they've managed to fly beneath Apple's radar, but in a recent update, they got flagged. And guess what? Apple wants its cut, just like the mob. They want their cut and they want 30%, which means that the model doesn't work. 90-10 doesn't work if the 30% happens. So
Mm-mm.
it's a big deal. It's going to the courts in the EU. It's in the courts right now in the US. And actually, a fascinating thing that came up as we talked about last time is Phil Schiller mentioned, hey, will we ever drop that percentage? So I kind of think that we might see that at some point in the next couple of years.
You wonder with the new with all the news, right? About the whole idea of developers being able to have like their own little stores and their own little space. It kind of looked really nice and really sweet. It just doesn't give you the money, that's all. It's the way that you can show off your goods, but you don't get the cash. What do you make of that, John?
Well, it's different, right? I mean, look, if you have a totally digital product, let's say gems in a game that are power-ups or whatever the case might be, right? You
Mm,
can make 1 billion of those at essentially no marginal cost. So a 30% tax on that is not horrible. Guess what? I don't want to give my credit card information, my payment information to random developer 123 because I don't know
mm,
where they are. Maybe they're in Russia, who
yeah,
knows where. I have no clue. I have no zero trust. So it makes sense to have a payment layer that is trusted. On the other hand, when you have different products, like for instance, this startup did, Fan House, that's an actual person
yeah,
taking time to interact and greet a person like we're doing face to face
yeah.
digitally. And that's not a virtual thing. You can't create 1 billion of those. You have to have different models. And so Apple has to introduce some more flexibility, granularity in what they charge where and how.
Yeah. That's what we saw coming, though. People said, you cannot be sort of the hypermarket. At some level, there's going to be the boutiques, the shops. And if you're going to take the same cut from everyone, you know what? John, you're screwing people, so I won't go there. It's just not right. Just not right. Let's talk about something other than Apple. There's Android. Android has not been sleeping, man.
Yeah.
Android 12
I'm
is going
glad
to
we're
be a good
talking
deal.
about it. I'm glad we're talking about it because guess what? We've been talking Apple so much, and guess what? It's a big deal. There's a lot of monetization on Apple. It's a big platform. There's all
Hmm.
all that stuff. But Android is a bigger platform, and
Hmm.
while on a per device basis globally there isn't as much monetization, overall there's much more. And we're not talking about it enough, in my opinion, with all this SK ad network, iOS 14, iOS 15 stuff. So Android 12 is going to be a really big deal. Google's VP of Engineering, David Burke, tweeted just a couple days ago that the beta is the most downloaded ever. And it's a huge revamp. We basically had kind of little updates, little updates, little updates for the last few versions of Android. This is the biggest revamp in years. It's got
Hmm.
massive customization features, like make one configuration change and your whole experience of your phone, the whole UI changes. That's something that Apple will never compete with because Apple wants to make sure that the user interface is standardized to a degree, is easy and obvious to everybody. And guess what? When you customize, sometimes that happens a little less. It is also going to be more optimized for one-handed use, which is super helpful if you're doing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And for maybe other purposes as well, which we won't get
I
into.
was just not gonna go there, John. I was thinking, yeah, that's a great point, John. So, John, tell us, you are, the ultimate Apple. I wouldn't say fanboy. I didn't say that, but you are an admirer. Is this gonna get you to rethink?
No, I mean, I have both
No?
platforms,
Okay.
right? I've
All
got my,
right.
iPhone 11
I know.
Pro, which, I'll upgrade this year, and I've got a sort
I
of
want
a
the
random
purple one,
selection
but
of Androids that come through as people ask me to review devices and stuff like that, so
okay.
I'll keep, dual fisting it.
Okay. Well, I've got 2. I mean, I was Android and I said, you know, I was gonna say, "Fuck this shit," but no, it's uh,
Beep!
beep. I was Android until it melted on me once, and I said, "Okay,
Oh,
let's not F this." But then I went to Apple, and I've been happy ever since, so I'm not gonna do that.
wow,
And
that
that
sounds like a little fairy tale. I went to Apple and I was happy ever
I was happy
since.
ever since. Nothing frigging melted anymore. It was a good life. It was a good life.
Awesome. So, Peggy, you've got some mobile heroes in the news. What's up?
They are movers and shakers this time, John. This time I put it literally and celebrated with them. We got a little bit of a vibe going here, right? So we've got Kate Duong, senior UA channel strategist, formerly now a new role at Jambox Games at senior manager UA, and she is rocking it. And that's just a lovely picture that I think says it. Moving on, rocking it. New position. We love it when they do that, and they do that so quickly. Heroes are on the move. They're in demand,
I
which comes
have
with
to
it.
ask. I have to ask
Mhm.
about that picture. I mean, how did you get that picture? Did they do that picture when they said that she was moving on and taking a new role, or where's that picture come from?
So that picture is, if you I would just be a hero just for the photo shoot, right? This is the kind of picture they take for the Mobile Heroes dedicated page. This is a beautiful picture. I did the stars because I know her and I think she's very cool, and I just thought, hey, stars moving up, but awesome, isn't it?
Well, I just have to say for everybody on the audio podcast who is cursing us right now as we're
Oh,
talking
yes.
about a picture, what we're looking at is this very cool picture of Kate in a studio. She's got a guitar, she's on a stool, she is strumming it, she is the rock star, and it looks really cool.
It does indeed. And she is a rock star moving to Jambox Games. And they move on and on. This is awesome, right? And we don't know how she did it. I mean, it's like you want to say, "Hey, Noah, how'd you do it?" Because for a brief period of time, but still hugely impressive. Noah Gutterman, director of marketing at Visco, hit number 1 on the App Store, right? Beating TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Wow, is all
Wow.
I can say, John.
Well, great job, Noah,
Great
getting
job.
Disco to chart at number 1 in the App Store. That is not easy to do.
Nope. Awesome teamwork, awesome job, and I still don't know how it happened. I mean, it's very, very popular, yes, but, there had to be some sort of campaign, some sort of secret sauce there. Another one moving on and up, and this is pretty cool because we did have Sally Chi. We had her actually, she was on a Liftoff webinar recently. She's growth manager at Chime. Challenger Bank, of course, chiming in. Yes, I did say that. At
Oh,
number
wow.
8, I did. Number 8 on CNBC's Challenger 50 list, up 17 spots from last year.
Wow.
So quite a jump.
That is impressive. That is impressive.
Of course, it's really kinda cool because Chime also partnered with the Mavericks, so, it's just like this dream team thing going on, right?
Nice. Nice.
And finally, and you'll remember her, John, she was
Yep.
on Mobile Heroes, and she's on a webinar with us. We just love Annika, right? Reaching higher because she can. Thimble's Annika Lynn trains for yet another marathon, and there she is sharing it in Instagram, and you just gotta say, wow, if you got a role model for health, fitness, and just peace of mind, she's the one. Just incredible.
We have chatted with her on multiple occasions, and we've also done lots of webinars, all that stuff with video. And you see her in her native environment, which is her apartment in New York City. And there is fitness gear
Yeah,
everywhere. And she'll show up in a tank top, and the muscles are rippling, and
yeah.
she is fit as a fiddle. It is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is what we have. Rock on Annika. I know her. She's a friend of mine because when you talk to someone so often, you sort of get into what they're doing. I am just amazed because look at me. I'm like, I'm work from home desk. Is there such a thing as a desk potato? I don't know, but I admire her. Rock on. Keep doing it. And again, John, you heard it here. All the news
So I
here.
have to send you a monogrammed hammer as well as a desk
Absolutely.
potato.
It's the desk potato.
That's a new thing. That's a product. We need to start making desk potatoes and
I think
selling
so.
them. That's
I seriously think so. It's like, this really cool take on Mr. Potato Head, right? No,
yes,
but seriously, I mean, do we ever leave this place? And it's worse because you're in PST. I'm in Europe. It is the end of my day. I'm still here. It's fun to be with you, John, but
yes, but you
I
are a
don't leave this
vampire.
place.
You are a vampire, so it all works out. So, Peggy, who are we chatting with today?
Okay, as usual, a great lineup and all into engagement. Timothy Lange, head of CRM at Tier Mobility, passionate about building a team that can improve engagement and retention efforts. Also passionate about one of my favorite bands, so I have to give you a high five on this one. U2, risking it all to cross a highway to get to a U2 themed bar. I hope you made it and you can tell us all about it. And yeah, one of your interests is engaging maybe with the band, also planning your own business, Timothy. Wonder what that's all about.
Yeah, it's I mean, why not
Tell us.
during the pandemic, right?
Got time for it. And here we go. Simone Wong, also CRM manager at Tier Mobility, where Tim is as well. Tim builds the teams, right? Simone is focused on the data, improving the foundation for the CRM platform there, data connectivity also to support engagement. She loves psychology and hates something you probably hate, John. Hates spending time doing things manually that can be automated.
No, that's you. That's you. You're buying a tool every other day to do something automated.
Anything
That's
else
true.
like
Okay, and keeping along with people who are creative, not that you aren't, Dave, we're getting to you. Marco Esposito, former mobile hero, delivery hero. So 2 heroes in one here, John. Creative
Wow.
project manager between gigs. Speaking of gigs, he's not just helping brands be more creative and engaging, he's also creative in producing music, 5 tracks so far and counting.
Yes, it was like exactly the same. Like pandemic, it was over, it was here. So you have to feed the time like creatively. I think it's good.
Nice.
And we're gonna, and of course, keeping on with creative, Dave Dabbah, CleverTap CMO. Today, our guest has his own podcast as well. Dave, great to have you. What's your podcast about?
Well, I've got a couple podcasts, Peggy.
Okay.
If you're into sports, I recommend checking out the Disturbance, which is my sort of my fun, passionate side project on sports. And then through CleverTap, we've got a couple different podcasts. I do have a new podcast coming out called the Backwards Hat CMO. Hence
the backwards hat.
Hence the backwards hat. And I do want to say this, Simone, you would be my best friend if you worked for CleverTap. You've got to have people that love automation and hate doing things manually and understand data. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Peggy and Joe.
That is good. That is very good. Awesome. I mean, like, who only has one podcast? I mean, how lame would that be?
Right. Well, and
you gotta have 2. I mean, why not?
Which leads me to my real quick next question is for Marco. Marco, you're going to have to send me your tracks. Maybe I can license something from you.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. This is Mobile Heroes Uncensored episode 8. We are super pumped to have you all. And while it is uncensored, we do ask you to please keep your clothes on. We are not yet live on OnlyFans, although Peggy has been bugging me about that. So maybe for another show, who knows? We are talking today about segmentation and engagement. They sound super boring, but they can 10x your performance and make a wah app into a woohoo app. Simone, we are going to start with you. You have been unanimously elected Goddess Queen of all mobile. What do you do with all that tremendous power?
First of all, who named me that?
I did. I have that power. By the power vested in me, I have named you Goddess Queen of all mobile.
Thank you. I'm very honored. Why? what I do with segmentation, I think this is one of the, it sounds boring, but it's one of the hottest topics and one of the most important topics, I think, with engagement, because users are not the same everywhere. All users come to your app, come to your product differently, and with just one mind as a marketer, you cannot imagine, everything that a user would do. So understanding your users, understanding who they are, what they do, and how they actually use your app and use your product is really, really important. And with the right tools, as you already know, like I love automation and I love utilizing tools. I think it could be a really powerful strategy and really powerful tactic for app engagement and retention.
Excellent, excellent. But Simone, as the goddess queen of all mobile, I mean, you can make Apple feature your app for eternity. You can make Google do whatever you want. What is the one thing that you would do?
I would actually, well, this is uncensored, right? So I
Yes.
think there is with a lot of power from, tracking comes a lot of responsibility, I think, for, apps and marketers. But I think it's really important, and I would actually, recommend Apple or Google Play actually to give us more data on, actually like help marketers understand more of user behavior and tracking.
No recommendations required. I mean, you are in
Yeah.
charge. You have the power. You can do whatever you want. Awesome. You would get more data from the platforms. Love it. Dave, let's turn to you. You might want to get to know Simone. She has a lot of power, but we just made you the undisputed heavyweight champion of iOS. You can do anything you want with Apple's mobile operating system. What change do you make?
Yeah, I think the big issue and the big change is definitely on the analytics and reporting side. There's so much sort of vagueness that pops through in the results and in the numbers that has actually created and spawn a whole industry around analytics and tracking and data analysis. And the truth of the matter is they have all of the information that's there, but it is difficult to access. And the big thing, Tim's a big fan, or Timothy, sorry, is a big fan of you two. I've got, you can't hear it, but I've got Coldplay playing in the background. But just imagine being able to access that information in real time and being able to use the information that you're getting from a iOS operating system in a real-time actionable data way. Tim would be inundated with opportunities to travel around the world to see you two when they hopefully go back on tour post-pandemic. But from a marketer's perspective, putting the abuse part aside, having that information in real time is the holy grail of engagement and segmentation, and that's the flaw that I see.
Yep. Peggy, we've got some people who kind of aim a little low in some cases. If I had all the power over iOS, I'd probably introduce sort of a Office Space kind of rounding error that just deposits like a couple dollars into my account every time somebody signs up to something. And pretty soon I'd have billions.
John, you should be wearing some flair.
I have the requisite 2 pieces of flair for my office. Thank you. Dave, sticking with you, what is one key thing that separates apps with great engagement from apps where, D7 is a ghost town? People are already gone.
Yeah. It really simple. And this actually goes back to the concept of actionable data. Apps that have moved away from using historical behavior data on specific users and are actually moving into using real-time actionable data inside the app as it happens. Those are the brands that are ultimately winning. I'm not going to shamelessly plug CleverTap or anything like that, but what I do see, with the customers that I'm speaking with, their retention rates when they actually turn product recommendations into real product recommendations that are based on actions that have just happened. The retention rates, the long-term retention rates for those apps literally go through the roof. And if you think about the how expensive and how hard it is to get somebody to download your app for the first time, shaping that experience through the use of actionable data is really what people are responding to. Real quick too, John. There's a difference between you, and I'm going to date you now, between Gen, the Gen Xers, which I'm assuming you fall into, the millennials and the Gen Zers, and how they respond to personalization and data being presented to them, which is clearly based on tracking that has just happened and occurred. My kids are literally disappointed if a company or an app is not using that information because they perceive it as an enhancement to the experience. They don't perceive it as creepy, as my dad would, who still has an AOL email address.
Very, very interesting. Very cool. So, Timothy, we're turning to you, and you are super familiar with CRM, and we're going to talk a little bit about some areas that are familiar with that are touching on CRM. If you could make anything in the world of CRM happen that you want, what would it be?
Oh, geez, tough question. I mean, lately there's all these roadblocks coming up to collecting customer data. One after another, you see all these companies trying to restrict how much you get, try to put the limitations as to how you communicate the data you're collecting on customers on you. So I think if I had a magic wand, it would just be allowing me to hoover up as much data as I wanted on all my customers and using it however I see fit. And I mean, I think ultimately, to kind of build on what Dave said, right? It's those data points that you collect on customers that actually allow for that kind of personalization and customization of the product that lets you stand out from your competitors. Like if we don't know why someone's coming to take a ride at Tier, we're dead in the water versus a Lime or a Bird who probably know that about their customers already.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, take it to a mobile context. What does CRM look like or mean in terms of a mobile app user?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the evolution of CRM, obviously everyone traditionally thinks of email, but now you kind of have this omnipresence of CRM always being connected to your phone with the prevalence of everyone having a phone on them at all times. And so you have to be really mindful of how is your user kind of moving around their daily life and interacting with their phone and interacting with the environment. And then how are you collecting that information about the customer in a not so creepy or creepy way, and making sure that you use that information to bring about these communications or this kind of CRM touch point to build this kind of relevant conversation with them, right? Because again, CRM ultimately is about relevance, and having that mobile information and having that mobile touch point, you can know when someone's out and about in the city and can hit them up with an offer for going to a specific restaurant, taking a piece of transportation, versus I think email used to be a very static, like you're at home, we're sending to you, you're reading this at your inbox. Now the inbox is mobile. So you have to kind of adapt to how someone's actually living their life and using their mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because email is still a very useful tool in a lot of ways, but it's kind of like for an earlier model of, when purchase decisions happened over days or weeks or months, or, and now we're instant and mobile. Marco, we're turning to you. You've been sitting there very patiently while we've been blabbing on about everything else. I want to make you the absolute ruler of Google Play. It's your playground. You own it. You can make any change you want. What do you do in Google Play?
All right. I mean, that's a big power as well. So it's like a lot of responsibilities. I think like I will try to make like the experience like visually more interactive. I find out, like sometimes I think about it, like I don't know what you think, but imagine like entering in a store, like in a like in a Google Place, and having like the same kind of experience that you have when you go shopping. And maybe like I would use like augmented reality or like virtual reality kind of AR, like the technology to do like something like more visual interactive. And maybe like category management is going to be the next app store optimization. Who knows?
Cool. Very cool. So Marco, how do you run user acquisition for high engagement in our emerging privacy safe mobile advertising world? I mean, you used to be able to do lookalike audiences and a variety of things like that. You still can on Android to some extent. You used to be able to say, I want more users like that on iOS. That's going away as iOS 14.5 and 15 are arriving. How do you run UA for high engagement now?
Yeah, so I answered this question from a creative project management perspective, and from this perspective, I think that like branding is becoming more and more relevant. Creative assets are becoming more and more relevant, and definitely I think that like teams like brand and performance team, like it's like needed more than before to work closer to each other to really like analyze like performances of like the creatives, see like but like really like going in depth to like see like which creative elements works, like like going back like on my experience at Delivery Hero, we were like looking into which type of cuisines work in which markets, and like so like to leverage with the future concept that we were developing, we were like taking into consideration customer insights, so we were like pushing further with the user researches, and so like we were like getting from there like information about the audiences. And I think that now more than before, these things are very important for like performance team and brand team to communicate together when they strategize their campaigns in order to have like contents that are like creative, engaging, and performing at the same time. So
Cool. Thank you. Awesome. I think now we'll move into a couple questions that we can throw out to various different people that Peggy and I will throw at you. And there's been a very clear path to growth, right? Over, let's say, the past decade. And I mean, primarily kind of the past 5 years, but certainly the past decade. You kind of knew what you needed to do. You built an app, you refined it. You may have tested it in New Zealand, Australia, somewhere like that. Maybe you tested it in Canada before releasing in the US. If you're hitting an English-speaking market, you tested somewhere cheap. And then you released, and then you acquired, and you spent, and you knew what you were getting. You had full data. Now growth is changing, and I'm going to throw this out to the panel. Can you achieve growth primarily via a strategy that emphasizes segmentation and engagement? And maybe Timothy, we'll go to you first. Can you achieve growth primarily via a strategy that emphasizes segmentation and engagement?
God, I hope so, because I mean that's the tier strategy right now. I mean, like frankly, I think that with any of these products, right, it's you can throw it out there and it might have its moment in the sun, but then ultimately you have copycats that come in, or you have saturation in the market, like we're seeing that with e-scooters right now. And ultimately, where you can really make your money is being able to identify those customers who are very loyal to you and the reasons that that customer has become very loyal to you, and kind of continually exploit that so that you don't have to worry about this high cost, high growth kind of strategy that ultimately could pay off for you, but really kind of forces you to invest so heavily in acquiring those new customers, building out teams that is their sole purpose, versus having a strategy where if you play with the analytics properly and you play with CRM properly, for example, you can just get those customers that you know will be kind of your bread and butter and will fuel 50% or more of the revenue that you're going to see year over year.
Nice.
John, can I jump in and add something? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's funny, like Timothy, as you were talking, I've been thinking about this. This is the sad state of sort of coming out of the pandemic. How much time I've thought about engagement and segmentation and retention. And the way I think about segmentation today is I think of it almost as a macro program, and the real money is made when we take segmentation. So you build a segment, and it's sort of a macro segment, and you ultimately achieve a tremendous amount of success when that segmentation turns into personalization. And if you will, it's almost individual segmentation that is expected by consumers that is actually driving, that actually drives growth. So, the macro part is, I am not, look, I'm a big Metallica fan. And I like U2 and Coldplay and Cardi B. I listen to what my kids listen to as well. But if you're going to segment me and move me into a specific market, you'll find that my individual preferences are macro from a hard rock perspective. And that in order to move me across the finish line, you've got to do it when you break that segmentation down into my personal individual experience. So I'm not just a Metallica guy. I like U2 and I like Metallica and the Foo Fighters. In Dave Grohl we trust. But that right. At the end of the day, though, the segmentation piece sets you up with something that has to be brought down into a personalized, individualized segment, and that's where the power is. At least that's what I've been seeing in the marketplace.
It's like kind of finding a balance, no? Finding a balance like between because of course, like when you build the segment, you want the segment to be performing, right? Like so,
correct.
Like you don't want to start like too small, like, but yeah, within the broad, like you want to like personalize. I think like the balance is like something that's the core of the segmentation purpose.
Yeah.
Simone, do you automate that? Because if you're going to segment down and try and get as personalized as possible, I mean, you can't manually create 10,000 segments, right? So you're the queen of automation as well as all mobile. Do you automate that?
Yeah, and I think definitely both Marco and Dave brought up a good point of finding that balance with, whether that's automating and, personalizing the content and personalizing the experience for the user. But then there's also this balance of, after we've found the right segmentation or right strategy, we also need to remember to not diversify the personalization too much, because I think it extends to, how we identify these segments. It also kind of extends to, the brand and how we also position the product. So, if in case, we find three, huge different, customer buckets that, behave differently, and then we also kind of shape the product strategy around that. We also risk, diluting, say, the brand purpose or the product and overall kind of the product itself. So I think there's always ways, I think, to automate it by using dynamic content, making sure that each user receives the right CRM message at the right time that suits their habit and suits their contacts. But at the same time, we also need to strengthen what actually the product means for the user as a whole, and not just, focus too much on, and I mean, that answered your question, right? Like, can you actually just achieve growth primarily with segmentation? I think it needs a good balance between segmentation and also the core brand message and the core purpose of the product.
Awesome.
I wanted to build on that, John. I know I'm not interviewing here. I'm the interviewer. Can't speak for marketers. But I want to throw the idea out. Maybe we can turn this into a question here. I'm hearing about growth in the other direction, because what segmentation and engagement allows you to do is to say, I have customers that I'm going to let go, and therefore I'm going to save money. So it works in a different dynamic. Maybe we can throw that question out and say, okay, so what does a customer look like who is not engaged that you want to let go? When do you fire your customer?
I bet you Timothy fires his customer when he destroys about 10 scooters in a row, but
Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, if you come around Berlin, it's not uncommon to see 4 kids to a scooter, kids jumping scooters off of hills, a bunch of people riding scooters home like after the bar. And so I think, as Simone said, there is a cohort of customers that we see are trying to subvert this kind of core purpose we've established as a company, which is, changing mobility for good through the context of, green transportation, accessible transportation. For them, it's basically just a joyride. So I think what we look for is, are there those customers that are very obviously abusing the system by throwing a scooter up in the tree, but then also those customers who are maybe gaming our system of riding every 20 days, taking advantage of the fact that we've said, hey, you haven't ridden with us in 20 days. Would you like a free ride on us? And so we look for those kind of delinquents through our base, and we basically segment them out to say, yeah, no, we can't promote to these people anymore because we have to protect costs, because we can't be giving out free rides all the time, and protect image so that the city of London doesn't look at us and say, well, why are kids throwing scooters over Tower Bridge? Can we stop that, please?
I'm glad I added that question. Okay, I'll get on with another one. What is the one thing most marketers think about engagement that isn't true? We've been talking about what works, what pays off, what has value, what isn't true. Dave, I have to ask you.
Yeah, I think there's I have to be careful on answering this one, Peggy, and thank you for not asking me the fired customer question. That's one that my media training has taught me to pass on. But I think on the engagement front, there is a overemphasis on historical data points that causes issues in results. Now, this is different, depending on the type of company and the type of product and the type of brand you have. So it will be different to each company. But at some point, those historical data points become inaccurate and become a detriment to your business. And I'll give you guys just a super quick example. I am not a New York Jets fan. I have never been a fan of the New York Jets at all. I'm a Minnesota Viking fan, hence the purple background. I plan on being a Viking groupie this year with the pandemic being gone. I'm going to travel the country watching the Vikings play. But about 10 years ago, I bought for my brother-in-law a New York Jets jersey. The NFL shop still thinks today that I am a New York Jets fan. It doesn't matter how much Minnesota Viking gear I buy. They still believe I want to buy green and white jerseys, and that's what is actively promoted to me. And so there's
it's because the Jets are just so bloody good. They're just so awesome.
Right. So I think, really understanding the context of your historical data is the point I would make. And how to use those data points in an appropriate fashion is really important. You know, once again, nothing more powerful than real-time information about what somebody's doing versus what they've done in the past.
Marco, I wonder if you'd chime in on that question. What's the one thing most marketers think about engagement that just isn't true?
I think, like, you know, a lot of time, like when you talk about like engagement, like so like you know, the it's like, you know, people talk about like retain user, just like, you know, bring them back, but they don't really like create engagement. They just like, I saw a lot of time they were like marketers running like engagement campaign or like return, like, you know, like retargeting campaigns, but then they were using like user acquisition kind of copies or like user acquisition kind of, you know, like contents. And it's like, okay, how do you pretend, like, you know, like it's just like you should create a different narrative. You should, like, you know, you should not just like retain user to your app, like, but just also like start creating an engagement, like a story, a new story, like think a bit like out of mind. And yeah.
So like mixing up the creatives for the purpose of saying, okay, it works, but I want to have a different engagement creative for this segment or that segment, not just like use it in UA, use it in retention, use it in win back, use it everywhere. Right?
All-purpose creative.
Right once, use everywhere. Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's exactly like, you know, for example, like what Simone was saying before, and I find like, you know, there should be like something like within the brand purpose and then the segments that you're talking about and that you're talking to, and kind of like, for example, maybe create some template that are like coherent with the brand messaging, but then put some variables that can be like, you know, dynamically, you know, that change dynamically according to the different segments, the different persons.
Okay, so dynamic personalization, that's what I'm hearing. What overall are the most critical factors when doing user or customer segmentation? I'll ask you, Simone, because you are down in the weeds. What are the most critical factors when you do that?
I think actually this might be like controversial, and it actually might tie back to, you know, the question about, you know, one thing that, you know, marketers think that engagement or something about engagement that just isn't true, or, you know, we should be careful about, is that most of the time I think the user doesn't care about the message. No matter how segmented or no matter how, you know, personalized or how much, you know, dynamic content you put in. Sometimes the most critical factor is actually the timing and the context of where the user is, what the user is doing. And that's something that you cannot just get out of, you know, the user's first name, user city, you know, favorite, you know, product or things like that. I think the most critical factor is that apart from the data you have, apart from these, you know, customer buckets, cohorts that you have, you know, learned from, you know, how many months of, you know, user tracking and things like that, can you actually put yourself in the user's shoe? Can you actually imagine how it is to receive a push notification right before you end a ride, or, you know, like start, you know, browsing an app or something like that? You know, it's really about, sounds cheesy, but it's really about like empathizing with your user, thinking in their shoe, and not just thinking of, you know, this is a user in segment A, this must be how they would respond to your message, because most of the time they don't care. You know, it really just boils down to, is it useful for me as a user? Is it the right time to receive something? So yeah, I think that will be my take on it.
Great answer. Timothy, I'll throw it over to you. I mean, you have maybe a different take on it because you're looking at a bigger goal, a bigger picture here. So what would you say is your bigger approach to engagement? Critical factors you look at?
Yeah, I think kind of building on what Simone said, it's recognizing that this idea of like one-to-one personalization is for most companies out of reach, right? Yeah, the Spotifys of the world, they will tell me that, hey, Tim, it's been an hour since you listened to U2. It's time for you to get on that train again. But for a lot of companies, they're just not at that complexity or sophistication. So you really have to take this kind of strict back approach where you say, what kind of works for the numbers? So how can I churn out a set of communications or good timing of communications to make sure that the majority of my base is kind of satisfied and will be engaged by this, but maybe the fringes of it won't be actually responding to this message. I think that's kind of the reality that a lot of companies like Tier and like my CRM team, we face, and that, we're only a couple people. We know we're trying to engage as many people as possible, but we can't empathize with the people who want to take joy rides and jump scooters off hills. We have to focus on people who want to commute through the city or want to use it in a responsible way. And if we speak to those people, ultimately we'll be able to engage people, and maybe we'll have some drop off, but overall we've done a good enough job of engaging the people that we need to reach with our message.
Can you solve that with tools or automation? I mean, obviously, guess what? The average company will have nowhere near the data that Spotify has, right? You're absolutely 100% right. Or Google or Facebook or, you name it, some of the big titans of tech. But can you solve some of your challenges with the right tech?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent you can, right? I think that you can go from a point where you're doing like batch and blast to all of your customers with one message to using more sophisticated tools where you're actually segmenting the message down a little bit. But I think the limitation you'll always have is at some point there's a designer, at some point there's a copywriter, at some point there's someone who has to process the data and get it to your platform. Mm-hmm. And because there's still that human element to it, you have to kind of prioritize, am I driving Simone crazy with this request to get 6,000 variations of this message versus, okay, we're getting a couple of really good messages that we know will let us hit our targets, and that's good enough.
Yeah, you do not want to piss off the queen of mobile. I mean, because who knows what will happen. Yeah. And also, you make a great point, because what if you operate in multiple countries? You happen to operate in Berlin, perhaps London, maybe some other places as well that you might want to be in. And guess what? You've got to change that message to fit different countries as well, so you can get into a lot of work. I want to get to, I need to know your deep, dark secrets. I mean, we're talking work here, but, I want to know the user engagement tactic that you saw or that you used that backfired horribly. So we want all the gory details, Simone. We want every last nasty detail. What did you try or what did you see that totally backfired?
Let me think. I think this is in some of maybe the earlier days when we consider engagement tactic or kind of lack thereof of this strategy of more is more. I think when you have a channel that you're just starting to kind of build and test, you're really just throwing any ideas out. You're just really trying any kind of messaging. And this is actually something that Tim and I work on in our last company. But we used to have so we're also working on a mobile app, and we used to send daily notifications at the same time with the same exact messaging in the beginning.
What did you say? Hey, today is Tuesday. Hey, today is Wednesday. Hey, today is Thursday.
Not even
that bad.
Hey, this is your daily notification, and basically this is your daily reminder. Check it out every single day at the same time. Not that it exactly like backfire, but I think we just never thought that it has any problems with it until we started actually testing with personalization and different timing. And we all another thing that kind of backfired was the fact that we just relied on one A/B test and decided that yes, changing the time from morning to evening is the holy grail of the strategy for this channel. And we just stuck to it. We stuck to it for months. We decided that this is the best timing until we actually started testing even more, coming back to segmentation, realizing that there's a huge value in actually sending it exactly at the time that the user has their own, habit with using our app. So I think it's these really simple but also like memorable insights that you get from A/B test, and you decided that yeah, this is what works, and then you stuck with it, and you decided that this is just the right strategy. But
I love that. I love that. Thank you for your honesty. Clearly,
Mhm.
triggered versus timed is almost always going to be better, unless maybe some circumstances, like you have somebody who absolutely loves the New York Jets and must know every time when they're starting to play a game. Marco, turning to you, give us a clue, share a user engagement tactic that you saw or used that backfired horribly.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was thinking, like, so, like, when I was like running like retargeting campaigns, for example, and we were like in Delivery Hero, like starting like new retargeting strategies for like for the different brands of the company, and we wanted to say, yeah, we can just like give like target like re-engage with your perfect users, and like try to combine like contextual elements with like user elements in a very hyper segmentation. And yeah, like I mean, especially when it was like about kind of like smaller brands, that it was like very it was working very terrible. But like we were like, no, no, just okay, like like we target like, and we like just like go in hyper like segmentation, but yeah, no, it didn't work. So it was like about we have like do a step back.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the balance that we were talking about before.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so every episode we play a few games, mostly for Peggy and my sick amusement. Today we're playing a game called Super Save. It's about the time that you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. Our next guests, you can be thankful, will have to play Super Fail, about the times they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Then everybody is going to vote on the best story, and the person who has the best story will get 50 Bitcoin from Peggy, because she has thousands of those suckers in an old hard drive, which she swears she knows the password to, but may or may not be true. Or at least you get 50 smart coins from me. Simone, let's start with you. What is the time that you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat?
So there's tough start for me to start with this. So we were developing a new feature, very much related to engagement and this topic of segmentation, where we were trying to challenge or use kind of gamification to challenge users to build a habit. And we were super kind of drilled down to this idea that user would love this feature, user would love building a habit together. And just before we decided to launch this, without proper testing, without proper like segmentation, we realized that there's a lot of like, actually there's like a fundamental flaw in how we define the habit that we want the user to build. And as a CRM manager, we were working close with product, and in some way like it's really depending on like how they design the feature and then the messaging that follows. And literally just like days before we sit together, we decided that this is how, like, we were deciding between like two like very different definitions, and which will fundamentally change the entire CRM journey for us, which we've spent weeks on and weeks of building, and also building out these different segmentations and targeting. And luckily, like I sometimes usually do, like I just put together like a table of we can either go route A or route B, and I basically just let our PM decide here's one option that you want to go, and we will design the CRM journey for you this way. Otherwise, like yeah, let's and then literally just like days before we decided to launch it, we finally sorted out, and we didn't waste like weeks and weeks of building and like planning. Yeah, I think when working together, like sometimes with product, a lot of your work depends on how the product is designed or how the strategy is designed. And when that wasn't like done properly, then you really wanted to, or you would really be worried that like your own work has been go down like the drained because you've wasted so much time on working on it. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Dave, have you ever had a time where you've snatched victory from the jaws of defeat at work?
Well, it's a good question. And first of all, welcome to Wednesday. Numerous times, sort of throughout my career, I think, my teams, snatched victory from defeat, and as I'm sort of here, and now everybody on this call has to realize, or I would mention that, I've spent my entire career in B2B marketing. So in B2B marketing, victory is about, pipeline generation from a marketing perspective. And, how do you figure out how to launch a brand in a market, and then turn that brand into something, pretty successful, rapidly. I will say the example that I'm going to go with here is what I would say is almost the birth of ethics and marketing. I'm partially responsible for ethics and marketing existing, because we as marketers have access to a lot of different data points. John, I've got your email address, I've got your phone number, I know when you're inside the app. Is this like a Christmas thing? I know what Santa is sending you or not.
Cole, definitely Cole.
Yeah, so I've got all of this plethora of information, and yes, it is true that I can market it to you across all those channels all at the same time, and I think learning that just because you have the power doesn't mean you should be using it in that way, which has sort of birthed this more recent concept of ethics and marketing. So for me, it's about growing brands from no revenue to 15 to 40 to all the way up to exits, IPOs, and stuff like that. I know I'm not going to win the Bitcoin because I'm being very vague about what I'm saying, but I will say that it's really for me about understanding how to grow pipeline rapidly in a B2B perspective inside a market, and that's something we've had at times struggled with, and then figured out the correct marketing mix to actually make that a reality. It's not just podcasts, it's not just PPC. I always say consumer marketers have it a little easier than a B2B marketer, because it's very clear about where you can go, whereas a B2B marketer, it's far more vague. How many podcasts should the CMO be doing a week? How much PR needs to get done? What's your PPC spend need to be like? What's your event strategy? How do you get SDRs to all say the right thing at the right time to the right customers?
You program them. I mean, that's just how
you program them.
Colts have figured this out, Dave. It's not. It's a known solution.
Right.
Simone's automating it, John. I mean, as we speak,
oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the good news is I've always got, we're plugging Spotify a lot. I've always got Spotify playing in the background.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So Dave's not winning the Bitcoin because he didn't tell us what his fail was, but everybody is now going to go search his prior work history for a privacy breach. So we'll check that out. Excellent. Marco, turning to you. Have you ever saved victory from the jaws of defeat?
For me, it's like when it happened like few times when we were able to activate and to include people in working in creative hackathons, different teams working together, different members of different teams working together for 2 days in producing new ads. And when we were doing with all the partners, they were like, okay, no, this is impossible. It's impossible that in 2 days there's gonna be new ads that are gonna be produced. And in the end, they were all like, wow, like amazed by the fact that we were able to do it. And there was always like kind of, you know, tensions, because at the beginning, of course, till the end, you don't know how it goes. But then it's like victory when you see like people working together, collaborating, working hard, like in creative projects and in like creating new ads. And then also like when these ads like run and they perform better than other live campaigns.
Cool. Timothy, your turn. Briefly, have you ever snatched victory from the jaws of defeat?
Yes, and Simone was part of this with me in the previous company. We had built a personalization algorithm, and we were a content app, and we were really excited because it was the first time we had done personalization. One of the problems, though, was the personalization system really prioritized recency of actually just interacting with a piece of content, clicking on it, not necessarily reading it, but just clicking on it. So we launched it, super proud of it. Then we got a lot of feedback from customers being like, hey, I'm getting a lot of recommendations for content about knowing my body, knowing my sexuality, improving my sex life. And it was because the system was really prioritizing the fact that someone had gone and just clicked on a piece of content that was about anything slightly related to sex and love, etc. So we were panicking, being like, oh my God, we have all these people that are maybe, you know, a bit uptight about the topic, reaching out and complaining to us. And so we just went into the system. We just said, why don't you just look for 2 things the person clicked on? And maybe that'll be just a more better, you know, more accurate litmus test of what the person actually cares about. And that quieted things down a little bit. We still did have some people who were like, yeah, my sex life is fine. Please don't bother me.
It's a very digital one. And I click on a lot of links, but
I'm happy with it. You know, I'm satisfied. It's the pandemic.
happy
Leave me
with
alone.
excellent.
Perfect.
Excellent.
After hours version of this podcast will be on OnlyFans, John. Is that
That is correct, Dave. Yeah, we're joining you there. The back at CMO is already there. I've checked. No, I have not. We have to bring this to a close. So very briefly, we're going to go one by one. Your top tip to boost engagement. Simone, will hit you first. Your top tip briefly.
Find the balance between engagement, segmentation, and actually the main purpose or the main message of your product, and not rely on segmentation too much before you lose your focus.
Excellent. Dave, briefly, your top tip.
Automate. Automate as much real-time data points into actionable user content. But understand your customer base and how to do that correctly. Tim's example is an example of using real-time data inaccurately. From the beginning,
too accurately.
Out how to use that real-time data and create the right mix to actually make it work. Everybody's business is different, so there isn't necessarily a blanket statement, but you do need to understand your customer base and figure out how to deliver the right mix of content that's going to keep them coming back to your app time and time again.
Excellent. Tim, super briefly, your top tip for engagement.
Don't try to engage everyone. Identify your best customers, know the data points that makes them your best customer, exploit that across as many people as you can, because you'll always get better margins getting those people who are already engaged to take an additional interaction versus someone who's done none and convincing them they should actually make that case.
Wonderful. Also works as personal relationship advice, Peggy.
Yeah.
Don't try to engage everyone. Absolutely. You'll run out of rings. Marco, your top tip for engagement.
Get to know your customer through like the customer research and take them like, put together brand team and performance team, creative team to find like creative ways to engage your customers.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful and amazing. Marco, Dave, Tim, Simone, thank you so much. I've super enjoyed it. And Peggy, I assume the same is true of you.
Absolutely. I was going to give out Bitcoins here. I heard a couple great
Oh, who are
stories.
you giving the Bitcoin to, Peggy?
I don't know. I think it's going to be Tim. I thought the story was good, straightforward advice. Dave, you're a runner-up. Don't worry.
For privacy rights, John was right. I couldn't say anything.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.